all right. I think we are ready. Peter. Okay. Here we go, everybody. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. If you're like me, watching today's live stream from Brisbane, Australia. So, welcome, everyone. So in the next 1 hour, we're going to have a conversation. You can join in the conversation too by having conversation, have a chat with the other fellow software engineers here, and also with me and Peter. So today's topic will be about how Scrum can make you an awesome software engineer. So just a background to all of you here. As for me personally, why did I came up with this topic? Why do I want to make a live stream about this? Because around last year, I noticed this a podcast. It was quite popular because it was from one of the biggest software developers community. I'm not sure if you have noticed. Stack Overflow, they posted a podcast about how Scrum. They didn't say how Scrum can make you a worse software engineer. I think it was a question: can Scrum make you a worse software engineer? So can Scrum make you a worse software engineer? So I had a conversation. I threw this topic. I threw this ball inside the Professional Scrum Trainer community. And my fellow Scrum Trainer, my guest, which will be introduced soon. He will introduce himself to all of you soon, pick up the ball. And he's interested. And when we had this conversation, we brainstormed. We got a feedback from, I'm not sure if any of you know Eric Neiberg, his Chief Marketing Officer, if I'm not mistaken, or VP Marketing from scrum.org. Said, hey, why don't you make a live stream in a positive vibe? So rather than seeing it from negative perspective, why don't you wrap it from a positive vibe? So that's how we came up with the title. And I thought, yeah, that was good. Let's have a counter argument and view it from a positive side. Can Scrum make you a better software engineer? How Scrum can make you an awesome software engineer? So as I told you folks earlier, today I won't be doing this myself. In my 3 previous live stream, I was only by myself. Part of it is because I was experimenting with the technology, because I'm still new with live streaming technology. But now I'm here with one of my, surprisingly, one of my source of inspiration. His name is Peter. And he'll be joining from Zurich, Switzerland. And he's one of my biggest inspiration. He said that he's going to introduce himself to all of you. He said that he's been into Australia, but unfortunately, we've never encountered with each other. We've never met in person. I only follow Peter through social media, mainly Twitter, and he posted a lot of thought-provoking comments, tweets on Twitter. This is my kind of guy. I like this guy. So I've been following Peter for quite a few years, mainly through social media, but I haven't actually met him in person. So, without further ado, everybody, give a round of applause to Peter Gfader, which is on my right. Yes! Come on, let's make it rowdy for this guy. All right, there he is. Peter, How are you, mate? How are you? Oh, mate, sorry, you're not in
Not too bad.
Australia anymore. So you probably forgot that Aussie accent, mate. But anyway, you've been
Right.
to Australia. Hey, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. How many people have we got? We got 15. We got 15 concurrent viewers at the moment. This is so awesome. So take it away, Peter. Introduce yourself with the rest of us that probably don't know much about you. Take it away.
All right. Hi, Joshua. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for thinking that I have a clue about software engineering. So that's going to be very interesting. Thanks also for mentioning that I'm a source for inspiration, because you are a source for inspiration for myself as well. I love your YouTube channel
Oh,
and
really?
the great stuff that I take away from that. Very cool, very cool.
I'm blushing.
Um, Yeah, I really don't want to talk too much about myself. What do? I help software teams to build great software products. That's what I do. I go to companies, I help them, I ask questions. I point to a direction where not everyone is looking. And one thing I try to do a lot is acceleration of learning, because
Mm.
this is something we are going to talk about anyway in a second, because I think learning is a key aspect of this whole thing that we are trying to achieve with the Scrum, and acceleration of learning is a key concept there. And I have a little tool belt with me usually, and I go to organizations and tell them what could work, what could not work, and help them to find out what they could do. Yeah, that's me.
Okay. Can you
Exactly.
tell something more personal about you? Hey, everyone. Just in case you don't know, Peter just had another boy, or another boy, right? It's your
Another
second.
boy.
Yay! Happy dad. Happy dad. Must be busier
Thank
now.
you.
How old is the second one, and how old was the first one?
The first one is 1.5, and the second one is 1 month. That's the reason why I just changed shirt, actually, because I changed his nappies and I carried him around, and then I had a little thing here. So on the live stream, I thought maybe it's good to change shirt for this special audience, especially.
Okay, special audience.
Should wear a tie, really.
Okay, how cold is it in Switzerland? You're up there while I'm down here in Brisbane. I think it's winter right now. In is
It
it?
is, it
You're in
is.
Zurich, right? Zurich,
Yeah,
Switzerland. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
a small town where I'm living. It's called Talvi, and it's actually quite warm for winter. It's 4 or 5 degrees, which is bad because the snow is melting, and I'm a big fan of snow, and I'm not a big fan of when the snow is melting. You have this mixture of water and snow that has troubles on the streets. It causes wet shoes. It's not nice at all. So I would rather prefer it colder or warmer. And this temperature is
Something in
the-
between. Oh,
no good.
when you were in Australia, what city was that?
Sydney,
Sydney.
Sydney,
Oh, I
three and a
think
half
you
years.
you might like Melbourne because they got four seasons in one day. Because
One
you
day.
like something in between, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
anyway, thank you. This is great, right? Because I've been admiring you for so long, and like this is like the first opportunity. We had a lot of conversation through Twitter, through Slack. We've never met in person. There has been quite a lot of face to face. Like when I went to a face to face, you weren't there, and when you went to Scrum.org face to face, I wasn't there also. So great to have a conversation. I'm looking forward to learn more from you. By the way, we got 15 concurrent viewers right now, folks. As you can see on the screen, introduce yourself on the chat window. Tell the community, tell all of the other viewers what's your name, what time zone you are in. As for me, I'm in Australia Eastern Standard Time, Brisbane. And interestingly, Brisbane is the only city in East Coast Australia that is not on daylight saving. how how interesting is that? So everyone else, like in Melbourne, in Sydney, and in Canberra, their own daylight savings. What time is it at your place right now, Peter?
It's a beautiful morning, 11 a.m., ready to rock about Scrum.
Really, 11 a.m. Yeah, everyone. So engage with everyone here, with the community. Are you fellow engineers? Let's rock this thing, and we're going to talk. Peter and I are going to have a conversation. We're going to debunk the myth whether Scrum actually make you a worse software engineer, or Scrum can actually elevate software engineers to become more awesome. All right. So, what shall we do? Okay, probably I'm going to show everyone on the screen about the podcast on Stack Overflow. This one, yes, I can see it right now. Is Scrum making you? It's actually a question. But when I read this podcast, there's quite a lot of misinterpretation, and I think um, it would be great if we can have a conversation about that. Some of the misinterpretation about Scrum, and that somehow makes a lot of software. You teach more technical training, Scrum from technical perspective, mainly for software engineers, much longer. So TLDR, do you think Scrum make you a worse software engineer? What's your perspective about this? You've been in this industry. You've been teaching
Yeah.
people about technical software craftsmanship with Scrum much longer than me. What's your thought on this?
My quick answer, I have a couple of answers. I have a very quick one and I have a long answer. The very quick one is it
TLDR.
doesn't.
It doesn't.
That's really, it doesn't. And the middle long answer is really about, okay, Scrum is a framework. So there is not a lot in stuff in that framework. Where I see a lot of organizations doing is they're putting a lot of stuff in that framework. They are doing practices
Mm.
that might not make sense in their context. And if you're applying Scrum in that context, then you might up in a situation where you think, okay, why are we doing all these estimation sessions here? Is this good usage of our time? That's one example, estimation sessions. Focusing on predictability. What else is there? Focusing on story points, on velocity, on all these practices that you can additionally add to Scrum. But in the essence of Scrum, Scrum is not making you a bad software engineer at all, in my experience.
Okay, interesting.
Should we define what we think is an awesome software engineer?
Oh, let's do that. So let's switch to a more positive
The
perspective.
positive, yeah.
How does an awesome software engineer actually look like? Okay. So, do you want me to show anything? Let me know.
Yeah, at the moment, I have just scribbled down some stuff on Miro. If you want to share that, it's not that interesting, but I think it helps to clear my thoughts. And maybe also for the people in the live stream, maybe you can share the Miro board. So I have here awesome engineer. And when I think of an awesome engineer or also an awesome engineering team, there is one key aspect here. And the one key aspect is the bigger picture. So there is more than just writing code. There's more just testing. There's more than bringing my stuff into production. There is much more stuff that an awesome engineer or an awesome engineering team is doing. I think you need to scroll up to the right.
Right. Uh,
Oh.
can you just click the follow me button on Miro so the screen is dragged to there?
Yeah, actually, I don't see you in Miro. It seems like you are on another Miro board. Could it be?
Nope.
That would be weird.
It's the same because you
Uh,
already. I'll paste you the Miro link again. Just in
Yeah, please.
case you probably missed it. Sorry about that, everyone. Sorry about that, technical issues. Yes! Okay. All right, let's make this
That's
fun,
the good thing
everyone.
about live streams, no?
Yep. People get to
Now I see you.
see. You see it?
Yeah, now I see you. Okay, I bring everyone to me. Maybe Mio was out of sync. I
Yep.
can actually not bring everyone to me. I don't know. But can you see now my scribbly things on the right top side?
Nope. Can you pull
In
me?
yellow?
Can you pull me? Just bring everyone
Uh,
to me.
I'm not able to do that.
Oh, yes, I can see the scribble. Woo! Okay.
All
Oh.
right, iPad Peter, here we are.
Ooh, okay. Interesting. It's quite big. Why is not syncing?
The beauty of a live stream.
People get to
Oh,
see bloopers, us making mistake.
that's cool.
Yep.
Nobody's perfect.
If you never fail, you never learn. So failure is actually good, right? We had this conversation earlier, right, about failure. You were asking me what failure did I experience in my previous live stream. Well, this kind of things, tech stuff. Oh. Anyway, I think I can post
Technology.
the link to everyone. I don't mind everyone joining the Miro
That would also
board.
be an option.
So I have shared to everyone the link to the Miro board while Miro is loading. But anyway, take it away, Peter. And I
All
think
right.
everyone, while I am fixing this, everyone can just look at the Miro board. Guys, folks, look at the link of the Miro board on the YouTube chat window so that you can see what Peter is doodling. All right, take it away, Peter.
All right. Yeah, I thought about also an engineer and then also an engineering team, and I think there are a couple of points. But the major point that I found most interesting is really the focus on a bigger picture. And when I say focus on a bigger picture, I think, why are we doing what we're doing? So basically, this outcome focus, this perspective on an LBC environment, suddenly need to work on a Miro board where we can't share stuff because the technology is failing. So we need to adapt. And responding to change is another important aspect of the bigger picture, I think. And I think awesome engineers focus on those perspectives, on these two major points, I think.
So TLDR, professional software engineers focus on bigger picture, delivering value to customers and responding to change. That's sort of like being a professional, right? So can we say that awesome software engineers are those who are professional? Because like delivering value, responding to change, focus on the bigger picture. Can we say that's about professionalism?
I would say so. The only thing that resonates with me with professional versus awesome is I quite like professional better, actually, now that you ask me that question. The reason is an awesome engineer tends to focus on the person or on the team. So we are great, we are awesome, I am great. And that could lead
Individual.
potentially, yeah, so that could lead to a hero culture. And a
Mm.
great professional engineer would make others look good.
Okay, that's
So,
interesting.
so
From
instead of making myself look good, like I fixed this, I wrote this, I built this, I tested this, I have shown this to the customer. I got great feedback from a key account from an airport company. So instead of me doing all that stuff, an awesome engineer would put others in the spotlight and would help them to make them look awesome. And
that's
that
what
would be a profession.
professionalism is all about. They actually leveraging others in the team to be more awesome. So it
Yeah.
seems that professional is much higher than awesome from your description.
From our definition for this conversation, we could go with that. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
I like that.
Okay, so professional engineers is much higher than awesome software engineer. Interesting. Interestingly, That word professional now is explicitly mentioned in Scrum Guide. So if we look at Scrum Guide,
Hmm.
one of the accountability of developers in Scrum is actually holding each other accountable as professionals. I think that's really awesome because it's quite a subtle change, but I think now it's being made explicit in Scrum Guide 2020. If I look at like the previous version, that part is not specifically mentioned. So if I pull out Scrum Guide now on my screen, yep, here
Hmm.
on the developers, the fourth accountability of developers are holding each other accountable as professionals. Now, here's what's so interesting about the word professional. I have a lot of conversation with software engineers, and somehow when they translate the word professional, it means more experience, like professional, very experienced. What's your thought on that? So do you need to be like have 10 years, a decade of experience as a software engineers and before you can call yourself as a professional software engineer? What's your thought? Can let's say someone who's new to the industry call them I'm a professional software engineer even though I'm new to the industry? I just let's say graduated and new to the software industry. What's your thought on that?
It's a challenge, I guess. With regarding technology and professional experience in a certain industry, I think it definitely helps. It definitely helps because you can ask better questions, and especially if you're transitioning in a more, let's say, let's call it senior, let's call it awesome, let's call it professional engineer situation, then you might not know everything. Like, I mean, nobody knows everything, but if you have a certain background with you, a certain backpack, there are two things that I observed. The first thing that I observed is people will look at you with a different eye level, let's say. So it's more believable what you say because they know, okay, he has maybe done something similar, things like that. So that's one point. And the other point is about you can ask better questions. And this is usually a struggle I see with Scrum Masters that don't have any technical background. So I'm actually a proponent of the Scrum Master having a technical background. And this is an interesting conversation because I know a lot of Scrum Masters who would say, no, 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 you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And I am actually still on the fence of, hey, if you're working in a software technology domain and you have no clue about software and technology, I think it's hard. And it's beneficial if you have a background or at least a bit of knowledge about software.
Yeah, I think
Why?
when we look at the Agile Manifesto, I think one of the keyword is helping others to do it, right?
Mm.
Show people how to be agile, like how to do this agile software development. But to your point, if the Scrum Master don't have technical background, how can the Scrum Master show like all of those technical practices that enables agility, right? Yeah, I'm also in the fence on this one. um, on one side, I think the Scrum Master cannot just talk only, like asking coaching questions. At one point, you need to show people, you need to model. Yeah, all of that test-driven development. It sounds cool. All of that
You
Docker,
should do it.
Kubernetes, but how? Like, if you're just asking like coaching questions, like you will just get like a weird look from the and what you just ask questions. But yeah, I'm also on the fence on this one. I think also
Mm.
in other industry like when a coach or even a mentor need to teach or to coach the coachee or the mentee, they need to have previous background. I learned this from music. I like looking at good guitars or and made by really good luthiers. Now, in that kind of industry, the luthiers brings their tacit knowledge to mentor like new luthiers in the industry, how to make like beautiful art, craftsmanship guitars, right? You can't just talk about here. Oh, here's how you carve it. Here's the theory. You need to show them how to carve those guitars to be beautiful looking guitars. Interesting, interesting. So
Mm.
professionalism. Oh, you doodle something more here. Can you explain?
Yeah, the learning. Let's talk about learning. Is this diagram with four areas? Let's call it. Maybe there are five. I don't know. But there, at the moment, my thinking goes in those four areas. So there is the process, the domain, the technology, and the social people stuff. There is actually more the more I think about it, but let's ignore those for now. So if we just focus on those four things, you could be an awesome process master. And
Hmm.
if you're an awesome process master, that means you have a huge of knowledge in this area. So a lot of process knowledge covered. You know about Kanban, you know about how to work together, Scrum, and all that stuff. On the other hand, you have zero domain knowledge. So that means in this area, you're quite weak. You have no ideas about what are we actually trying to achieve in this domain that we are working in. A domain is an industry, is like the airline industry, or is the pharma industry, or
Hmm.
is the social security industry, whatever industry you are working in as an engineer. The third aspect is technology, and usually I think teams have a lot of knowledge there. So the area that they are covering here, especially engineers, they have a lot of technology knowledge. And on the left hand side and the bottom corner, there is the social skills, people skills. And what I'm trying to draw here is these gaps. Now, the green stuff that I'm drawing now are actually the gaps that we have as a person or as a team. So the gaps are basically we don't know. We don't know everything about technology. We don't know everything about the domain. We don't know everything about technology. So these are the gaps. And I think the job of a Scrum Master is to find those gaps and let the people fill them. Now, an awesome Scrum Master, or let's call that more technical Scrum Master, would actually fill those gaps with role modeling, with asking
Hmm.
questions, and maybe also showing, as you said.
Yeah.
But I think this is an interesting model to think about different perspectives of engineering. So it's not just about the front end, the Docker, this Kubernetes, the technology.
Hmm.
It's also about the social skill. How can we grow together as a team?
Oh wow.
The domain we're working in, and the process. Yeah.
Oh, really models how a professional software engineer should be. So the
Mm.
Scrum Master really need to have that character. Hey, this is how a professional software engineer should be, but without telling, the Scrum Master becomes like the mirror, or the engineers just look at the Scrum Master. Oh, by how the Scrum Master behave or act, this is how a professional software engineer should be. Oh wow,
Mhm.
interesting. So we learned about professionalism. Now we kind of going tangent. We started the topic with awesome, but now we're going to professional. But because it seems that being professional is much higher than just being awesome. I really like this conversation, Peter. So it's about learning. Professional software engineers learn, make others looks good. Now, let's say this is the benchmark, right? This is how a professional software engineer should be, as we can see on the Miro board here. Um,
Mhm.
so, why would people have the perspective that Scrum actually deviates them or drags them away towards becoming that professional software engineers? I personally think it's not Scrum that makes them worse. I think how Scrum is used at their company that makes them a worse software engineer. But I would like to hear your thoughts first. My thought is it's not Scrum that makes them a worse software engineers. It's actually how Scrum is being interpreted by someone, we don't know who, and how that someone kind of push down and implement Scrum into the organization. I think that's what makes them worse. But what do you think that makes a lot of software engineers feel they can't reach that level, that professional software engineer level?
Mhm. From a high level perspective, I think it's basically the zombie scrum what Barry and Christian have in their books and in their mottos and in their posters. It's about zombie scrum, and zombie scrum basically means it's not our process. Someone dictates on the engineers, now you have to do this, when you have done this you need to do that, and after you've done that we need to focus on this. So someone else is telling you not what to do. And this is a huge problem because Scrum is not a process that tells you what to do. Scrum is actually a framework that is empty. It tells you nothing about the next 7 hours and 45 minutes, what you should do for next. And here, the key thing here is the teams are adapting the process to their needs. And if that's not possible, then you need to fix that situation. So I think this is the high level.
Okay.
And on a low level, if you go into the details, I see a lot of teams focusing on estimation sessions, story points, velocity, predictability. Is everyone busy? Questions where I think, ooh, what's going on here? Is this team really in power? Are they really in control of what they're doing? And most of the times they are not. That's sad.
Let's hear from the 16 people who already joined. So everyone, as you can see on your screen right now, share us on the chat window. Maybe Peter and I can learn from you, from your situation. So like Peter said, Scrum is just a framework. It's empty. You can fill it with good things, I suppose, that makes you a professional software engineer, or you can fill it up with useless rubbish thing that makes you a worse software engineers. So share with us on the chat window any instances where Scrum has been misused or misinterpreted, or what are those useless thing that gets filled up in the Scrum framework that actually deviates you as a software engineer from becoming an awesome software engineer. Hey, we got Amir. Welcome, Amir. Yes, from Philippines. 6:30 p.m. All right. So everyone, as you can see on the screen, share with us on the chat window any instances where Scrum has been misused or misinterpreted at your organization, at your company. I can share my thought, and probably you can jump on from my personal experience. It's interesting you mentioned how Scrum is a framework. Your perspective is really interesting. I learned something from you. Scrum is a framework. You can fill it in with good things, good stuff that makes engineers more professional, or you can fill it with things that are not really valuable, that kind of detract engineers towards becoming a professional. From my experience, it starts further than that. It starts from how the organization perceive what Scrum is. Most often, and especially if we tie this back to that podcast on Stack Overflow, what they're rambling about, I think a lot of organizations view a sprint as a shorter waterfall, right? They bring their bias. Oh, Scrum is just a shorter waterfall. It's just a shorter waterfall. Let's compress as many functionalities as possible in the sprint, and the functionalities, the amount of features per sprint is fixed. And because a sprint has like a fixed time box, so that becomes like a fixed deadline. So it becomes a a mini waterfall. It starts from there. And from there, a lot of engineers I have interacted with, they view Scrum, how Scrum is being used at their organization, is like a feature factory because the organization just treat a sprint to push as many features as possible. So they become like a feature factory. They are not given time or space to do all of that software craftsmanship. The higher level people don't care about doing tests first or automating. In fact, they're not allowed to refactor because there is this perception that refactoring is actually not valuable. Feature is more valuable. This is what I view. It starts from there, and then a lot of engineers feel that a Scrum, a sprint, is just a mini waterfall, and they feel that they are a feature factory where they have been told to do to complete as many features as possible in one sprint. But here's what's so interesting. A few weeks ago, I started using a tool. I'll just mention the name so that it's not abstract. It's not that I want to say bad thing about these tools, but it's so interesting, and it's probably influencing a lot of software engineers' thought process. So I installed Jira. I just want to play around with it and to see what's going on. I haven't used Jira for so long. And so interesting, on the first page, when we want to create a project, we're given two choices. Scrum, I think Scrum template or Kanban template. And in the description section, it's really mind-boggling because it says if your project is deadline sensitive, use Scrum. But if your project has no fixed timelines, it's just like a free flow, then use Kanban. I didn't feel really good when I read that. I don't know because a lot of software engineers I have worked with, they use Jira, and if that is the description of Scrum, like it's if it's deadline sensitive, use Scrum, but if it's a free flow, anything goes, you got no fixed deadline, use Kanban, because Kanban just focus on flow, right? And this is how a lot of software engineers look Scrum negatively, and they feel they're just a feature factory. What's your thoughts on that? Do you also like from your end, like do you also view the same thing, or maybe not?
And that's definitely a pattern that I see a lot, like teams being feature factories. And there's an interesting something I discovered just recently, and this is about working process. How much work is in progress at the moment in this company or in these teams? And what Kanban and Scrum both try to do is they try to limit that.
Mm.
With Scrum, it's more the sprint container. We can't take everything, so we need to slice it down into smaller pieces. And I found it quite fascinating. How do we make actually those slices so that they are still valuable to our users? This is hard. I'm not saying this is easy. This is actually very, very hard. And with Kanban, it's the same. With Kanban, you just have the working process limits on the board or somewhere visible where you know, okay, we can have only one or two items in development or in other. So both concepts try to limit working process, and this is a good thing. But from a management perspective, it can look like, is everyone busy? Or do we have enough work? And here is the counterintuitive thing. If you have more stuff that is in parallel, work is there, the number of interactions in your team goes down. So if you have a lot of work in progress, the number of interactions needed in your team are lower. So let's assume we have 4 people. If you have 4 items in progress, these 4 people, everyone takes their stuff, and then they don't need to talk to each other anymore. And in my experience, if we don't talk to each other, especially in a complex software development journey, this is a bad thing.
Yeah.
So it would rather make sense. Let's focus on one thing. Let's talk a lot about it. Let's get it done. Let's use all our skills in order to bring it to production and measure and learn. And this is also where the feature factory breaks down, because in the feature factory, we want to learn from production.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's
if
interesting
you want to
how
break it down.
you mentioned that Kanban is also about limiting work in process, but it's more explicit on the board.
Mm,
However, many teams think that Kanban is just boards with columns and swim lanes. They stop there. There's no explicit
mm,
work in process limit. I think that's really
abs-
interesting. I think if you can't do Scrum well, you might do Kanban much worse because
mm,
in Scrum, the work in process limit is implicit. That sprint is actually limiting WIP, but with Kanban, it's more explicit. It's on the board, which is interesting because I had a lot of conversation with the developers because they view Scrum a sprint as a mini deadline. Oh, let's move away from Scrum. Maybe we can escape to Kanban, and they use that description of Kanban from the Jira screen, the create new project screen in Jira. Oh, let's escape to Kanban because in Kanban, like there is no fixed scope that you have to do. Anything goes. It's free flow, right? That's really interesting.
mm. There's some interesting questions. Maybe you can read them.
The
And
what?
in the meantime, the questions in the chat in
Oh
YouTube.
yes, yes, yes. Let's see. Let's
Maybe
see.
there, let's
We
jump on
got
one
that.
of those.
Okay, okay. Let's jump on.
Because I actually, when you invited me to this conversation, I thought about four things, and for me, maybe just mention those four things because I found it quite interesting when I reflect about this topic. And the first thing is quality. And with Scrum, there's a huge focus on quality, and that is mentioned in the definition of done. And a lot of organizations don't have that focus, and I think that's where the software craftsmanship comes along as well. Because in the craftsmanship manifesto, basically it says, short version, only quality lets you go faster. Build in quality, then you go faster. If you
Yep.
don't do that, you will go slower. That's the short version of the Software Craftsmanship Manifesto, and it's highly embedded in Scrum because it's the definition of done,
Yes.
it's our goals, it's the feedback loops that you establish.
Yes.
So I like
Yes.
that about Scrum.
Yes, that's a really good point. A lot of like Scrum bashing conversation, especially like on the technical side. Scrum doesn't care about quality. Scrum doesn't care about technical excellence, software craftsmanship. In those kind of conversation, oftentimes the definition of done is never being mentioned. That's actually where the software craftsmanship can be placed, right? The definition of done.
Mm,
And the Scrum Guide itself said that you're done when you have a releasable increment, right? But you need to figure out how a releasable increment looks like, what you need to do to get that releasable increment every sprint. And I think that's really hard. And to
mm,
tie back to our conversation today, it needs professionalism to deliver releasable increment. It's not how many functionalities you deliver, but is it always releasable? But let's read. There's a comment from
mm.
Urs Ensler. I'd go further and say that Scrum team should be able to decide anything regarding the product it's producing on its own. All right, so that's really interesting.
I agree.
On its own, there should be no. Yes, I think that's another reason why now in Scrum Guide, it's the Scrum team now is self-managing. Before it was self-organizing. Interestingly, what I learned from that is it turns out that even team that is still self-organized, they can still be managed. I think Scrum wants to leverage Scrum teams, engineers much higher. Now they are professionals. We should trust them, right? We trust that they have the best intent for the company, right? So we should empower them to self-manage. All right. So thank you, Urs. Where is Urs from?
I just one word. I agree with Urs, and I think in reality it's hard
Mm,
because having an independent Scrum team that can focus on one product all the time is something I see very rarely. So there's work for the Scrum Master to do in order
yeah.
to allow that.
In
Because suddenly we
related to
talk
that,
about other teams, we talk about partners, we talk about contracts, we talk about architecture, our architecture does not allow us to work as an autonomous, empowered team. So how can we change our architecture? This is the whole Conway discussion. And so in reality, it's actually very, very hard. But I agree. I agree with yours.
Yeah, and I think because now the product owner is part of that Scrum team, the product
Mm.
owner should be empowered to make that financial decisions in the Scrum team because the product owner is part of that Scrum team. The product owner should be partners with the engineers. If the engineers say, "Oh, we need like a better architecture," fight for your budget inside the organization. That's why they select you to be the product owner. But that's another discussion because a lot of product owners are also are not really the owner of the product. They're
Mm.
proxy. And here's another comment from Karsten. When developers have to wait for approval or allowance from a boss who then needs tech info from the dev in order to make a decision, similar to what Urs mentioned. Here's another one. Some misused Scrum, according to Amir Reyes. It's when people don't understand why you do the Scrum events. People hear story points are important, then instantly adapt story points
Mm.
to is it hours? They instantly adapt story points and they map story points into hours. Yes, I have seen that
So,
also.
so
They didn't get the essence of what story
maybe
point
that could be
is.
interesting for the listeners. How do you get away from story points?
Mm.
How can we get rid of story points?
Are you saying that you are moving away from story points, Peter?
Yes,
Wow,
I would
well
love to.
done. Yes, Peter is in the camp to ditch story points. Okay, tell me more. Why are you moving away, shying away, not no longer promoting story points to engineers?
The initial idea of story points was basically to answer one question. And the question was, how much work can we fit in a sprint?
Mm,
But a lot of companies were doing story points for all of reasons. They're doing it for reporting. They are doing it to compare teams. They are doing it to track progress and all this weird stuff. Let's forget about that. And in my experience, in order to get rid of story points, in order to get back in the steering wheel for professional engineers, one key here is to build up trust. And building up trust is to deliver what you promised. And if you can work with a sprint goal or with outcomes, basically, which is a sprint goal in the end, it's very easy to get trust again. And then you shift the conversation back from, do we have enough points? Do we have enough estimation sessions? Do we have whatever nonsense there is with story points? You shift the conversation in the direction of, what are we trying to achieve this week? What are we trying to achieve this quarter? How can we make the life of our customers better this week, this quarter? And this is powerful if
wow,
you have that
wow.
conversation.
It's interesting we're in the same camp now, especially after Scrum Guide 2020 was updated. Now it emphasized more on goals. So I also now focus and emphasize more on goals. And now there is like a product goals. So there's no point you cramp as many points or as many velocity if you have no goal, like you don't know where you're going. Are you saying that you're also in the no estimates camp? Come on, make a confession.
I followed every discussion and there's no estimates, everyone. And I loved the conversation. I loved listening to Woody, to Neil, to Ryan, just to dropping some names. Also Vasco, obviously. A lot of great people, and they had great thoughts. And basically, I didn't invent anything. I just picked their brains. I heard stories from them, and to me, it made completely sense. And
Yeah,
in the end, it's all about outcome, and this is
outcome.
what we're trying to achieve.
Outcome over output. I think we
Yeah.
kind of read this one more here. Yeah, back from Urs, zombie scrum sample, cargo culture, doing stuff because others do it without any actual gain.
Mm.
Anyway, interesting. So, so that we get outcome out of today's live stream. Going back to our topic. So, how do you think we can? Um, how Scrum can make you awesome software developers. Here's my thought, but feel free to jump in and add some more. I'm going to go to our miro board again. I think there are on the miro board. As I'm probably gonna pull you here. Yep. So
Mm.
I think there's like you said, Scrum is a framework. It's like a bucket. You can fill it in with useful things that can leverage the engineers to be professionals. Or you can fill it up with, if I pick Ur's word, cargo culture, then yeah, it may detract engineers from becoming that professional engineers. I think we can fill this in like TDD kata or refactor. Have you ever done like in a team that has a culture of doing TDD or refactoring kata like every sprint, like they allocate time like deliberately to do that?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
actually one of the jobs that I have with a lot of clients. Yeah. So basically, what I try to do is I do a lot of katas in the beginning, but I quickly want to do the transition from the Mickey Mouse world, which is our katas, because it's all artificial, they're specific to one problem. I want to go to the production code as quick as possible. And I'm experimenting there with different concepts at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm using katas a lot, yeah. And
So my question would be, and this would probably be valuable for all of the viewers watching right now. So in a sprint, let's say the team have that kind of culture. We want to do like TDD refactoring kata, right, to improve their level of professionalism. Where do you put that, like in the group agreement, or is it in the definition of done? How would the team know how much they should gauge every sprint during sprint planning, uh, and still considering that they need to do TDD or refactoring kata every sprint? What's your thought? How does it work in your area, in your space?
Um, in my experience, it's actually fairly easy
Mm-hmm.
because I don't work with story points and I don't want to work with feature factory teams where we want to try to achieve as many features as possible. And usually the question is actually more complex because we need to factor in learning, which is TDD, katas, practicing stuff, and exchanging. We need to factor in another piece of learning where we try to this is something I try to teach all my teams. It's about a cross-team learning. Like, what did I learn in the last 24 hours? What did you learn in the last 24 hours? Can we share them? There's a new tool. There's a log4j issue at the moment in production. How did you fix it? What did we do to prevent it in the future? So there's a lot of learning happening, and this also needs to be factored in. And the first important piece that we need to factor in is removing technical debt, technical improvements. And usually those don't have any story points at all. So there is three pieces of work that needs to be done, or in my experience, that makes sense to do in a sprint.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask a team, and if you work with small sprints, I'm a big fan of 1 week sprints.
Ooh.
This
Okay.
question is actually not a challenge because, okay, this sprint we work on this feature and that feature. The goal is to improve all of that. And the rest of our time, we are doing the technical improvements. We are learning all about that. And we are practicing at Kata on Friday afternoon.
Ah, so
So,
you already schedule it, like you're using 1 week sprint, and every Friday the team deliberately
exactly.
do kata. So they already
Right.
like have on top of their head, like every sprint planning.
Yeah.
We should factor in that every Friday we're doing kata, so we're not going too much. Or
Exactly.
does, is the team only like take one product backlog items per sprint during that sprint planning, and that's why you only use like a 1 week sprint?
Not necessarily.
Not
So they
necessarily.
are
So sometimes they can take
uh,
more than one.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. Because when I read the extreme programming book, initially when Ken Beck and his colleagues did extreme programming, and the reason why Kent Beck use a 1 week sprint is because they literally only do one user story per sprint. So that's why they like 1 week sprint, because there's only one user story, and everyone would do pair programming to complete that user story. So in your case, the team does not necessarily take one. Sometimes they can take more.
Yeah, yeah. But still, I focus on let's get one done, and then let's pick the next one. Because if we have a low work in
Oh,
progress, we have a high collaboration in the team. And this
okay.
is a good thing in my experience.
So if that is the case, if in the middle of the sprint they can pull some more, that means the sprint
Hmm.
planning is so short then.
Yeah, fairly short. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. What gets a bit harder, I think, is backlog refinement, because you
Mm.
need to think about how do we break things down into smaller pieces, and usually that's harder because you need to think about still being valuable with the feature that you're delivering, but still breaking it down into smaller pieces. Which decisions do we need to take now? Which decision can we postpone? What could we do in one day? This is one question, one coaching question I really love asking the teams. If we are planning a sprint, I would ask them, what can we achieve in one day? So instead of one sprint, 1 week,
Wow.
what if we have only one day? And usually people are very creative, and then they say, we could actually go in that direction, or we could ask that other team, or we could all do this, or we could do this. And this is an interesting exercise because it brings up ideas on how to achieve something in even one day. And then you can go back, okay, we have actually 4 days. Where should we spend more time and make
Wow.
it better, or where should we improve the technical point of view? So
But in that
that's
1 week
quite nice.
sprint, is the team delivering something releasable? Or do they
Definitely, yeah.
still need to do the UAT outside of the sprint or the SIT? Because a lot of Scrum teams I worked with, yeah, their sprint looks short, but UAT is done by another team that is not part of their team. Like in your case, is it always releasable state every sprint, even though it's a
That
1 week sprint?
that's mandatory. Otherwise, we're not doing Scrum. Definitely, yeah. And I say not doing Scrum because I see that in a lot of teams where they say, okay, we are doing 1 day sprints, but in their 1 day sprint, they're just writing code. And writing code is not a sprint. I mean, we want to test it, we want to code it, we want to break it down, we want to talk to customers, we want to get feedback. So all that should be part of one sprint. And if that's not possible, we need to fix that problem. And that's also something interesting I found with 1 week sprints, because the if it's hard, do it more often. And with 1 week sprints, we need to test it more often. We need to automate our deployment pipeline. We need to get feedback from our customers often. And then it gets harder and harder, and that shows the problem earlier. And that's quite nice, I think.
Oh wow, that is really mind blowing. If it's harder, do it more often. Mind blowing. All right, all right.
1 week sprints are hard, yeah,
Yeah, that's
definitely.
really interesting because a lot of engineers, oh, it's too hard to get like a 1 week sprint. Let's not do it. they
Yeah.
actually downgrade their they actually downgrade their benchmark their standards so that they can look good, right? But in your case, that's really mind blowing. If it's hard, do it more often. If it's painful, do it more often. So if doing manual testing is painful, do more automation.
That
It,
would be the conclusion then, yeah.
yeah, if
Releasing,
deploying to
deploying.
production multiple times is more painful, automate it. Do it more often. All right, that was really good.
Exactly.
I learned something from you. All right, that's really mind blowing. Okay, you do TDD refactoring kata. I also believe that this is a practice that can leverage software engineers to be more professional. I guess for a lot of viewers who are watching, how does the conversation between you and the management happen that makes them allow the team uh, to do refactoring kata? Because it consumes like one day, and you said it's a Friday,
Mm.
every Friday, right? How does the conversation between you and the managers happen? Perhaps other viewers here can learn, and maybe they can start talking to their managers at their workplace. Hey, boss, we want to do refactoring kata. We just watched this live stream between Joshua and Peter. His team does refactoring kata, and it really leveraged his team to be professionals. How does it work on the field so our viewers here can learn?
I'm in the lucky situation
Mm-hmm.
where the management people, they have enough an awareness and enough background and enough experience that they learned, okay, pushing the teams, removing slack time, removing learning opportunities is not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually they get to me and they have already made this experience and then tell me, hey, Peter, we need to do something. We need to improve our quality. We need to
Mm.
improve our practices. We need to improve, improve,
Ah.
improve, improve. And then for me, it's an easy sell because basically I have a huge toolbox. I have a lot of practices. I have a lot of exercises, and I help them with my toolbox. If managers have not been in that situation
Mm.
before, it's harder, I think, because what I would do, and this is a very interesting question actually,
Yeah.
what I would probably do is I would start with explaining what is the difference between knowledge work, which we are doing. We are in a complex environment. We are knowledge workers, I would argue, and simple work. Simple work is if you do this carrying stones from A to B, if you spend more time carrying stones from A to B, you will carry more stones. But with software and knowledge work, more time is not the way on how you build better software. And maybe this is an analogy a lot of managers can understand, if, especially if they are not from the software world. And my assumption is that they are not from the software world, because if they are from the software world, you would not need to explain that because they would know about technical debt, refactoring, continuous improvement, automation, all these software knowledge work challenges. So and my assumption is that they are not from the software world. So I would start with what is simple, what is complex, and then in a complex domain, can we get better? How can we learn? How can we continuously improve our way of doing and learning what we are we building the right thing? Are we building it right? And all these things. And based on that, I would try to sell the concept of we need to spend time learning. I think
S-
somewhere along those lines.
are
Maybe that's
you
helpful.
saying that most of your conversation happens with technical execs like CTO, um, and that's why
Yes.
they buy this idea because they've been there. They've been engineers in the past, and probably in the background, it's actually them who is fighting in the organization. The CTO is probably fighting with the CEO about the importance of this, and so that's why you already get the buy-in because the fight already happens between the CTO and the CEO. Is that what you're saying?
Totally, exactly.
Ah, okay. So probably I should talk to that CTO. How was the conversation happen between you and the CEO? Hence, you can come up with this approval. Okay, okay. Interesting, interesting. All right, so let's.
Thank you for the reminder. That's a very good reminder. Maybe if I give the CTO enough material, so he can have a better conversation with the CEO. So I really like that reminder from you. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Oh, cool, cool, cool. Let's ask the audience here. We talked about TDD refactoring card. I also believe this should happen every sprint. Every sprint should not be about just delivering functionalities. That's really interesting. I don't really understand how people interpret that Scrum is about delivering as many features as possible. Even in Scrum Guide now, it's being made explicit. It's about value, outcomes. That word is all over Scrum Guide now. And
Hmm.
I think if the team also factor in doing those things, uh, it can increase the value of the product. The organization may not see value. It's like an investment. and you're building like for long-term future, for sustainability. You're not just like you don't want to be fast. You don't want a short-term win, but you want like a sustainable agility, right? Not only agile, fast, but then slower in the end, because you're fighting with a lot of technical debts. But you want to continuously, sustainably agile, because, like you said earlier, because we factor in quality from the beginning. Let's ask the viewers. Hey, folks, maybe Peter and I can also learn from you besides like TDD or refactoring kata. What do you think other practices that Scrum teams should do every sprint to improve their level of professionalism? Do you know any other? Maybe we can learn from each other. Maybe Peter and I can learn from you. Maybe we're going to Google it. And maybe we start promoting it to our team. And while everyone is thinking about that, there's another practices. I haven't like have enough knowledge to promote this, but maybe you have done this a few times. I'm not sure. Mob programming. Mob programming. Have you ever done this? I've just read several articles, blog posts. I think Woody Zwill is a big proponent of mob programming. So like a mobbing. So all of the team go around one computer and everyone just do one feature, one functionality at a time. I think this is like a pair programming to the max, to the extreme, because you're instead of like just two people coding like in front of the computer solving one problem, it's like the whole team. I think you can also do refactoring TDD in there during the mobbing, right? You can just blend it in. Have you ever done this before?
Yes.
What's your experience with this?
Yes. It's very interesting because if you start with mob programming, in my experience, so what works for me is a little bit of a ramp up. So I don't start with mob programming from the day one. Usually I have a couple of workshops before with the teams where we talk about communication, we talk about slicing, we talk about technology, we talk about testing, we talk about test first, we talk about TD. And once I have a couple of workshops with the team together, we start with mob programming. And usually when you run a mob programming session, and I know a couple of teams that are doing it every Monday, some teams are doing it every morning, some teams are doing it full time, some teams are doing it just when the work fits the situation. So that's different concepts on how to apply that practice. And yeah, that's something that teams figure out by themselves. But what I've found most interesting, it shows problems earlier.
Right.
Similar concept as before when I said, if it's hard, do it more often. If
Right.
it's painful, do it more often.
Right.
Mob programming can be very painful.
Yes.
And the painfulness shows you, okay, we have a communication problem. We have a trust problem. We have a technical skill problem. We have not enough knowledge of our domain. We don't know how the airline industry actually works, but we are writing a product for the airline industry, even if we have no clue about the airline industry. So it highlights all these problems earlier. And for me, this is great because as an external coach, as an external Scrum Master, I want to know about these problems because then I can ask questions and help the teams get better. And that's one very interesting concept of mob programming.
Oh yeah. So in your case, it's not like the purest mob programming where the team do mob programming every day throughout the sprint, but they just self-manage, select the time when it's appropriate to do mob programming. How because you're like the actual practitioner for this, I haven't really succeed in promoting this because a lot of times the battle is between me and the management. What? You're pulling like the whole engineers to do program? That's too expensive, right? But from your report from the field, what are the positive feedback about doing mob programming? You know, on one side, it may look expensive because you're pulling all of the engineers, but for all of the viewers here, so probably they can learn from your experience. What's the positive feedback about doing mob programming?
Two aspects. The first aspect is the team themselves. For some teams it's painful, but for most of the teams it's exciting and they
Oh,
love it. So it's feedback from the team itself. And from the outside, it's usually a decrease in lead time.
oh, really?
What I mean, what I mean by that is we have an issue in production.
Mm.
Let's come together, let's fix it. And since we have all the skills, we have all the eyes on that issue, everyone has reviewed it, everyone gets feedback, everyone fixes it, and the lead time decreases a lot.
Oh,
And
wow.
usually that's visible to the outside world if lead time goes down.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It kind of makes sense if I visualize it, because there's less handovers because all of the team members are there. They're huddling. They're looking at like one giant monitor together. I guess it makes sense. Less lead time, more collaboration, more communication, like less waiting time for approvals. Let's say clarification from the users. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. But how about the quality? Because that's important when we talk about professional. Does like mob programming lead to better quality software, or is it just a hype?
I think the tendency is there, but there is no causation. Let's say just by doing mob programming, it's not automatically you increase the quality, but the tendency or the likelihood of increasing the quality is there because, and this is one of the reasons why I think, because you have more eyes on the problem, you have more eyes on the code, you have more eyes on the config, you have more eyes on whatever you're doing,
Yeah.
and usually that increases the feedback and then increases quality.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess also to put on top of what you said there, I guess faster cross pollination, right? The
Mm.
transfer of knowledge because everyone is looking at the same code base instead of everyone is in silo, in isolation, focusing on their own parts of the software or their own parts of the product, right? It's really interesting. Okay,
Mhm.
okay. So I guess, from this conversation, we can say that. What do you think, Peter? What do you conclude? Do you agree that Scrum makes you a worse software engineer, or this is just a myth? What do you think
This is a
after this? Huh?
this is a myth. You should empower the teams and bring the let them choose their process, let them inspect and adapt. And Scrum is just the framework. Once a week, we have a sprint review and we continuously improve the product and the teams. That's it.
Yeah, and I think it goes both ways, right? To touch your point and our conversation in this past 1 hour. If you know you're working with professionals, you know the software engineers are professional, you would trust them, right? Same like
Mm.
if we go into a plane, I would trust the pilot. I wouldn't ask the pilot, "Hey, are you going to take us like safely to my destination? Like, show me like your credential." We don't do that, right? Even though the pilot is behind that door, we don't even know the face of the pilot behind that door. But we know we have that high trust that the pilot will be professional. We don't do dodgy things, like taking us maybe to the
Mm.
wrong directions or not doing like proper checking to the planes that may cause us die on the plane, right? So I often say that also to managers, like, hey, if you know you're working with professionals, you should trust them. So if you don't trust them, what would be the reason, right? Instead of blaming them or micromanaging them, why don't you leverage them, empower them, like give them all of the tools they need so they can be trustworthy and reliable so you can do other stuff as a manager, do more strategic stuff in the organization rather than micromanaging teams. Do you have any other
Cool.
thoughts on this? Um, on this myth. I think it's how organization perceive it. My own experience, I think organizations bring their bias. What Scrum is, they just cherry pick what kind of. It's like a confirmation bias. They just cherry pick things that confirm their own bias. Oh, Scrum Sprint is a mini waterfall. Engineers need to get accurate estimates. You need to spend more time planning, estimating, so that we can be more predictable. Engineers need to do a lot of things, right? Things that's quite subtle but not obvious, like outcome, values, technical excellence, software craftsmanship, oftentimes are not factored in. But maybe because, like you said, a lot of the decision makers don't have tech background, and like what you said earlier, if they have tech background, they probably already experience the pain for neglecting technical excellence or software craftsmanship, so they probably don't want to do it again in their team. All right, so interesting
Totally.
conversation with you in the past 1 hour, Peter. Thank you so much. I learned from you, and I picked a quote from you in today's live stream. If it's painful, do it more often. If testing is painful, folks, if testing is painful, do it more often. If deployment to production multiple times is painful, do it more often. If collaboration is
Every hour.
painful, do it every hour. If 1 month sprint is too painful, do 1 week sprint. Make it shorter and shorter. All right. Hey, everyone. When Peter and I prepared for this live stream, we were planning whether we should do like a follow up. So if you're really interested, or probably if you watch the recorded version of this live stream, if you have any other thoughts, if you think we should cover other things, leave a comment, leave some questions. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows how the future looks like? Maybe Peter and I will attend to your follow-up questions. Maybe we'll do another live stream. It's been enjoyable. I personally learned a lot from you tonight. In my case, Peter, it's daytime in your time. I learned a lot. Really enjoy our past 1 hour. All right, folks. If you have any more questions, leave a comment down below in the comment section. If you're watching the recorded version, leave a comment. Do you have any other things to say to our fellow software engineers here? Peter, any thoughts for them?
I do. I have an announcement. I run 4 trainings next year. This is the Applied Professional Scrum Software Development Training, the best training ever. You can find it on the scrum.org website. Check it out. We talk about agility, Scrum, technical stuff, coaching, clean code, a lot of goodness. And I see you there. I hope to see you there.
Oh, yes. Thank you for mentioning this. I think I should touch this. It's really interesting how a lot of organizations, when they look into Scrum, this is my personal experience, by the way. Scrum. Okay, you need to train your engineers, send them to applying professional Scrum for software development. Wait, how much does it cost? 3 days, and we got 50 engineers. What? Too expensive! Sending all of our engineers to APS SD software. No. Let's send. And engineers are not on the higher pay grade, attending that kind of expensive training. Not really valuable. Let's just send one person to the Scrum Master training, and the Scrum Master will teach us everything about Scrum. So why do you think it's actually valuable? What's your pitch line? Why is this actually valuable for organization who still have that kind of mindset, who still have that kind of thought? No, engineers are on the lower pay grade. Like sending all of them, we've got like hundreds of them, and 3 days, that's too expensive. Like who's going to take care of the software in production? Our operation is going to be totally off if we send all of our engineers to this APS SD training. What's your thought? Because you've been doing a lot of these trainings, probably more than I do. What's your pitch?
My pitch is we are not focusing on the next version of Java, C#, .NET, or whatnot. We are focusing on professional teams that create outcome with their software. And we have a lot of practices, we have a lot of methods, we have a lot of tools, we have a lot of collaboration techniques that you can take home and next Monday try with your organization.
Oh, cool. Can you tell our audience how they can reach out to you? Maybe like me, who likes following you on Twitter. Peter likes to tweet everybody. You should follow him on Twitter. I'm always inspired by his mind-boggling tweets. Where can the audience follow you, reach out to you? Let's say they're interested with this APSSD training, maybe try to influence their manager to send them to this training. How can they reach out to you?
Here's my Twitter. I just posted in the comments also the training to the APSSD. So these are definitely two good points. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm on most social communication platforms except Tinder. So reach out to me on those platforms and I see you soon.
What did you say? Like Tinder? You're on Tinder? Is that what you just said?
I said that's the only platform I'm not on.
Oh, okay. Okay. I've got hearing problems fixed. All right, thank you. It's been enjoyable. Thank you, everyone who has already joined this live stream 1 hour. So we conclude from this stream. This is what my key takeaway. No Scrum, TLDR, Scrum does not make you a worse software engineer. Scrum is just a framework. You can fill it in with good stuff that can leverage engineers to be awesome, to be professional. But some organization fill it with things that are not valuable, and that's how a lot of software engineers feel. They are just feature factory. They cannot reach that level of professionalism. And there are some practices that we discussed today that a lot of engineers should factor in. They should blend into their Scrum, into their sprints, like katas, mob programming. Yeah, and when you're doing sprint planning, you should factor that in. Scrum is not only about delivering as many features as possible. All over Scrum Guide, the word value and outcome is being mentioned. Scrum is about delivering value, and sometimes when you deliver value, you can deliver less. So delivering less could possibly deliver more value. Wait, you can deliver more value even though you deliver less functionalities. That's
Yes,
us.
exactly.
Yeah, more functionality does not equal to more value because you can deliver lots of useless functionalities that people don't care about. Okay, thank you a lot, Peter. Enjoy the rest of your day. I think it's around lunchtime already. It passed lunchtime already. In your case, is it?
Lunchtime.
Yes, thank you. Enjoy your lunch. And everyone for joining, thank you so much. And probably see you until our next live stream. Post your questions, anything else that you would like to learn from both of us, put it there. And probably we're going to do another round of live stream if there's great of enthusiasm. Thank you, everyone. See you, and see you. Yes.
Bye
All right.
bye.
That's it.